No one should expect to find light in a place where the world has already burned. Yet there it was, amid the skeletal remains of a bombed-out church, where shattered stained glass lay scattered across the stone floor like frozen tears, and the altar stood cracked beneath a ceiling torn open to the merciless sky. A single candle burned, steady, unwavering, defiant against the cold breath of destruction. Private Edward Miller froze at the threshold. The war had taught him to trust silence, to fear stillness, to expect death behind every corner of ruin. But this was different. This was not the sign of battle. This was the sign of someone who had not surrendered. He stepped forward slowly, boots echoing softly through the hollow nave. The candle's flame flickered faintly, casting trembling shadows across broken pews and collapsed stone columns. It had no place here, no reason to survive amidst debris and ash. And yet, it refused to die. Edward's eyes swept the darkness, no movement, no voices, only that quiet, stubborn glow. "Who lit you?" he murmured. The air inside the church was thick with dust and forgotten prayers, yet something within it felt painfully alive. As he approached the altar, he noticed faint marks along the stone floor. Dragged footsteps, recent ones. Someone had been here, not long ago, and they had chosen to bring light into hell. He knelt slowly beside the altar, watching the flame tremble as a cold gust slipped through the broken roof. Still it endured, as if protecting something, as if waiting. Then he heard it, a barely audible sound, low and fragile, carried from behind what remained of the collapsed choir stalls. A soft whisper, a breath drawn through cracked lips, a presence hidden just beyond the reach of the candle's glow. Edward's pulse tightened in his chest. This was no abandoned ruin. This was a sanctuary claimed by desperation, a last refuge guarded by a fragile flame. And somewhere within the broken bones of this church, someone was still alive, keeping the last candle burning, not for faith, not for ritual, but as a signal, a final call for someone who had not yet forgotten how to see. Edward remained perfectly still, every muscle tense as the faint sound repeated itself. A shallow breath, uneven, strained, unmistakably human. His hand tightened instinctively around his rifle, not in aggression, but in a soldier's reflex against the unknown. Yet the presence he felt here did not carry the scent of threat. It carried the weight of fear. He moved cautiously past the splintered remains of the choir stalls, letting the candle's weak glow trail behind him. The shadows deepened, and the cold bit more sharply as he stepped into the far corner of the ruined nave. There, partially veiled by fallen cloth and broken wood, he saw a fragile silhouette huddled against the stone. A woman. Her posture was bowed, shoulders drawn inward, trembling beneath a tattered coat that once might have been modest and warm. Dirt and ash streaked her face, and her hair clung in dark strands to her cheeks. Her eyes lifted slowly to meet his, wide with exhaustion and quiet terror. "I didn't mean to be seen," she whispered, her voice barely more than breath. Edward lowered his rifle at once, stepping forward only slightly, careful not to frighten her further. "You lit the candle," he said softly. "Why are you here?" She swallowed, her gaze flickering briefly toward the altar where the small flame still burned. "It was my husband's habit," she murmured. "He said if war ever swallowed this city, someone must remind the world that faith still lived." Her words trembled with something deeper than grief. "He never came back," she added quietly. The silence that followed her confession was heavier than the rubble around them. Edward felt it settle between them, thick with loss, with years stolen by gunfire and firestorms. Yet still she had returned here, to this shattered sanctuary, to keep a promise alive in the only way she knew how. "I come every night," she continued. "I light it, even if the walls fall, even if no one sees. If the light dies, then everything he believed dies with it." Edward glanced toward the altar again. The small candle wavered, but endured, and in that moment he understood. This was not just a flame. It was a defiance against silence, a quiet refusal to let war erase every trace of hope, every memory of gentleness left behind. Outside, the distant echo of artillery rolled across the night like a reminder of how fragile this sanctuary truly was. But within these broken sacred walls, the candle still burned, and beside it, a woman who had chosen memory over surrender. Edward stepped closer, his voice low, sincere. "You're not alone," he said, "not tonight." And for the first time since the world had collapsed around her, something shifted in her eyes. Not relief, not joy, but the faintest recognition that light, however small, had not yet vanished completely. The woman drew her coat tighter around her thin frame, as a cold wind slipped through the shattered arches above them, carrying with it the distant echo of a world still tearing itself apart. Yet inside the ruined church, everything felt suspended, as if time itself hesitated to disturb the fragile peace held together by one small flame. "My name is Clara," she said quietly, her eyes never leaving the candle's trembling light. "This was where we were married, right there by that altar." Edward followed her gaze. The altar stood cracked and scarred, its stone surface split by falling debris, yet still upright, stubbornly refusing to collapse like everything around it. He tried to imagine this place as it once had been, filled with music, flowers, the murmur of vows, and soft footsteps across polished tiles. "It was beautiful," she added almost to herself. "Even when the sirens first began, he said the church would always stand, that God would not abandon it." Her voice faltered, and she turned away slightly, as though exposing too much truth made it too real to bear. The candle flickered again, casting a faint glow across her weary face. "I know it's foolish," Clara whispered, "to come back here every night, but when I light it, I feel like part of him remains, like his vows didn't vanish beneath bombs and stone." Edward felt a weight settle behind his ribs, not as a soldier, but as a man witnessing grief that had nowhere left to rest. He stepped forward slowly, careful not to cross a silent boundary that did not need words. "It's not foolish," he said gently. "It's brave." She looked at him then, really looked, as if measuring the sincerity in his tone, the absence of command or pity. And something softened. A sudden sharp tremor rolled through the ground beneath them, dust cascading from above in thin gray sheets. The candle shuddered dangerously, its flame bending almost to extinction. Clara gasped, eyes widening as instinctively she moved toward it, shielding the tiny light with her trembling hand. "Not this too," she murmured. Edward stepped beside her without thinking, his body instinctively blocking the wind that tore through the broken roof. Together they stood there, two strangers in the ruins of faith, guarding a flame that had no business surviving, yet somehow still did. The church groaned ominously above them, weakened bones threatening surrender. Stones shifted, and somewhere far off, another explosion fractured the night. Edward glanced upward, calculating the danger with the sober mind of a soldier. "This place isn't safe," he said under his breath. "You shouldn't stay." Clara's hand remained hovering over the flame. "If I leave, it goes out," she replied. And suddenly he understood. This candle was not a ritual. It was a farewell, a final promise burning against the dark. But promises could not stop collapsing ceilings. Another distant detonation rolled through the night, closer this time, deep enough to make the fractured stone beneath their feet shudder. Fine dust drifted down like ash snow, coating the altar and dimming the candle's fragile glow. Edward's instinct screamed for retreat, but his eyes remained locked on Clara's hand, still cupped protectively around the flame. "Clara," he said more firmly now, "this building won't hold much longer. It's not worth your life." She didn't answer at first. Her gaze clung to the candle as though it were the last remaining tether to a world before the ruins. When she finally spoke, her voice trembled with a quiet truth that cut deeper than any warning. "He died here." Edward stiffened. "He tried to help people reach the shelter when the first bombs fell," she continued. "He carried 2 children inside, then went back for more. The third time, the roof collapsed." Her breath hitched, but she did not look away. "They told me his body was never recovered." The air inside the church turned heavy, saturated with her grief, with the invisible weight of memory pressed into every broken stone. Edward's eyes traced the floor slowly, suddenly aware that he wasn't just standing in a ruin. He was standing in the grave of a promise. "I light the candle so his soul knows I remember," she whispered. "So he isn't alone in the dark." A sharp crack echoed from above, stone grinding against stone. A section of ceiling shifted ominously and debris rattled down behind them. The candle flickered violently, dancing on the edge of extinction. Edward made a decision. He stepped forward, gently but firmly placing his hand over Clara's. "You've kept his light alive long enough," he said softly. "Let me carry it with you." She turned toward him, confusion crossing her exhausted face. "What do you mean?" He carefully lifted the candle from the altar, shielding it within his palms as if holding something sacred. "We'll take the flame, not leave it to die here. We'll let it burn somewhere safe." Clara stared at the candle now resting in his hands, as if witnessing something impossible. Her lips parted slightly, uncertainty mingled with relief. "But this is his place," she murmured. "His memory isn't held by stone," Edward replied. "It lives because you choose to remember. That doesn't end if we walk out." Another tremor shook the church, more violent this time. Dust filled the air, choking, suffocating. Edward reached for Clara's hand, his grip steady, unwavering. "Now we leave," he urged. "Together." She hesitated only a second longer, eyes lingering on the cracked altar one final time. Then slowly, she nodded. And as they turned toward the shattered doorway, the candle still burning between them, the ruins behind no longer felt like a tomb. They felt like a past finally being guided toward light. They stepped carefully out of the ruined church, the night air striking their faces with a bitter chill as the candle's small flame swayed between Edward's cupped hands. Behind them, the broken sanctuary groaned once more, a tired exhale from stone that had carried too much sorrow for too long. Clara paused at the threshold. She turned back, eyes tracing the shattered doorway, the collapsed roof, the silence where music and vows had once lived. For a moment, grief flickered across her face. Then something deeper replaced it, not denial, not forgetting, acceptance. Edward lowered the candle slightly, sheltering it from the wind. "He knew you loved him," he said quietly. "More than any flame could ever prove." Clara swallowed, her gaze finally lifting to meet the fragile light still burning despite everything that had tried to extinguish it. "I suppose," she whispered, "he would have wanted me to live too." They walked onward, moving away from the ruins, away from the place that had held her sorrow captive for too long. Around them, the city remained scarred and hollow. Yet somewhere in the distance, faint signs of life still stirred. Voices, footsteps, the distant hum of people refusing to disappear. Edward found a sheltered corner beneath the remains of a stone arch where the wind could not reach so fiercely. He placed the candle carefully atop a piece of solid rubble, protecting it as if it were a living heart. Clara knelt beside it, not as a mourner chained to the past, but as a woman finally releasing her grief into the quiet. The flame burned on, steady now, no longer trapped inside broken walls, no longer clinging to falling stone. It represented not just what had been lost, but what still endured. Edward watched her in silence, knowing some things required no command, no reassurance, no words. Only the permission to heal. And as the night softened around them, the candle continued to glow. No longer the last light in a ruined church, but the first light guiding someone back into life.